The skies over Mecca darkened to a shade of crimson unseen for millennia. Imam Mahdi stood atop the ancient hill, his weathered hands holding the sacred text as celestial light pierced the clouds. Below, millions gathered, believers and skeptics alike, watching as the first signs manifested exactly as foretold. Cities across the globe reported simultaneous phenomena, water turning luminescent, strange symbols appearing on sacred buildings, the sudden healing of the terminally ill. The faithful whispered prayers, while governments scrambled their forces. The Imam's eyes, clear and steady, surveyed the trembling masses. He had waited his entire life for this moment, the final hours before the world would forever change. What if the final revelation in the Qur'an was meant, not just for the faithful, but for all of humanity? 40 years earlier, a young Amd found the scroll hidden in his grandfather's collection. Yellowed parchment, written in a script so ancient, even scholars struggled to decipher it. But Ahmad understood every word, a gift that frightened him. The scroll spoke of a chosen one who would emerge in the final days, one who would bear the 7 marks of the Mahdi. Ahmad had 3 of them from birth. He tucked the scroll away, pursued his studies in comparative theology. Cairo, Jerusalem, Rome, centers of faith where he hoped to disprove what the scroll had planted in his mind. By his 50th year, all 7 marks had manifested. The crescent birthmark on his forehead, the prophetic dreams, the voice that came to him during prayer, the uncanny knowledge of strangers' hearts, the ability to speak languages he'd never studied, the healing touch that first manifested when he saved a drowning child, and finally, the vision of the crimson sky that haunted him for decades before it appeared today. "It cannot be me," he had whispered nightly, even as disciples gathered, first a handful, then hundreds, now thousands. Kamal, his first follower, approached now as Ahmad, no, as the Imam Mahdi, stood watching the masses below. "Master, it begins as foretold," Kamal said, his voice trembling. "The Council of 12 awaits your instruction." The council, scholars, scientists, former skeptics, had formed organically as the signs increased. Among them Layla, the astronomer who documented celestial anomalies, Farid, the physician who'd verified the healings, Ibrahim, once Ahmad's fiercest critic. "Tell them to prepare the broadcasts," the Imam said. "All channels, all languages." Governments had already detected unusual electromagnetic military satellites repositioned. Intelligence agencies infiltrated the gathering crowds. In Washington, Moscow, Beijing, emergency sessions convened. The Imam felt their fear, their disbelief. For decades, he'd lived quietly, teaching at universities, writing theological texts under pseudonyms, moving between countries as suspicions arose about his growing influence. Now there was no more hiding. The ancient scroll had predicted even this moment, standing above Mecca as the sky turned blood red, the exact date written in symbols he'd only recently understood. His phone vibrated, a text from Sarah Williams, the American journalist who'd been investigating him for months. "I'm here. I need to speak with you before this goes any further." The Imam smiled. The scroll had predicted her too, the skeptic whose documentation would convince the doubtful. Behind him, Kamal cleared his throat. "Master, there's something else. The opposition has mobilized. Yasir al-Harith has declared you a false prophet on all major networks." Al-Harith, wealthy, connected, dangerous. The scroll had named him too, though not by name. The great denier who would rally forces against the truth. "Let him speak," the Imam said. "The truth fears no challenge." In his pocket, the fragment of the scroll burned against his skin. 24 hours. That's all the ancient text had given him to prepare humanity for what was coming. The crimson sky deepened to purple. The first celestial lights began to appear, exactly as foretold. The Imam closed his eyes and heard the voices of millions rising in prayer. Fear, confusion, hope, 24 hours to fulfill a prophecy, thousands of years in the making. He took a deep breath and descended toward his destiny. The pendant rested against the Imam's chest, warm to the touch, despite the cool evening air. 7 interlocking circles of aged silver, each etched with symbols that predated written history. His grandfather had placed it around his neck on his 7th birthday. "This has protected our family for generations," the old man had whispered. "One day you will understand its purpose." That day had arrived. The Imam's fingers traced the symbols as memories washed over him. His grandfather's stories of ancestors who'd guarded ancient knowledge, waiting for the appointed time. How he'd dismissed them as fanciful tales meant to entertain a child. How wrong he'd. Sarah Williams pushed through the crowd, press credentials held high. Security parted reluctantly at Kamal's nod. The American journalist had made her name debunking religious phenomena. Her investigation of the Imam had begun as another exposé. Now uncertainty clouded her eyes. 23 minutes, she said, instead of a greeting. "That's how long the sky has been crimson. Precisely what your followers predicted last year." The Imam nodded. "You've come to witness, not just report." Her professional composure faltered. "I've come for answers. Rome's Tiber River is glowing. The Ganges too. Symbols have appeared on temples worldwide, symbols matching those." She pointed to his pendant, miles away in a government facility hastily established. Agent Nasir Rahman watched satellite feeds with growing concern. A career intelligence officer, he'd monitored fringe religious movements for decades. This was different. The phenomena were real, documented, simultaneous. "Sir, we've confirmed it's not mass hysteria or technological manipulation," his analyst reported. "Something is happening that we cannot explain." Nasir straightened his tie. "Prepare the helicopter. I need to see him myself." The pendant grew warmer as the Imam descended the steps toward the gathering. Each circle on the amulet now glowed with its own light: blue, green, amber, crimson, white, gold, and a 7th color that human language had no name for. As a child, the Imam had seen visions when he held the pendant during prayer. Glimpses of this very day. His grandfather had taught him prayers in languages that scholars now claimed were lost to time. He'd corrected his teachers on ancient texts, earning both admiration and suspicion. "You bear the burden of truth in an age of lies," his grandfather had told him on his deathbed. "When the sky turns to blood, wear the pendant openly, not before." Sarah walked beside him now, digital recorder capturing every word, every sound. "Your article last month called me a charismatic fraud," the Imam said quietly. She didn't flinch. "I follow evidence. Give me evidence." "Look up." The crimson sky now pulsed with waves of light, exactly as the pendant's symbols had depicted. "Coincidence?" Sarah whispered, but doubt crept into her voice. Around them the crowd parted, forming a path toward the ancient structure at the center of Mecca. Followers bowed their heads. Skeptics recorded with phones. Security forces maintained a tense perimeter. The Imam felt the weight of their watching eyes. Government agents, religious leaders from other faiths, scientists seeking rational explanations, and somewhere in the crowd he knew, Yasir al-Harith's followers waited, looking for any opportunity to discredit what was unfolding. Sarah's phone chimed. She glanced at it, face paling. "My editor says the phenomena are accelerating. The Vatican's astronomers have confirmed unusual stellar activity. NASA too." The pendant burned hotter. 24 hours, the Imam said. "That's how long humanity has to prepare." "For what?" Sarah demanded. Before he could answer, a beam of light shot from the sky, striking the Kaaba. The ancient structure didn't burn. It resonated, humming a single perfect note that brought the crowd to its knees, all except Sarah, who stood transfixed recording, and the Imam, who raised his pendant toward the light. "For the truth that has always been written," he answered, "for the revelation that changes everything." The black stone fragment lay exposed in the research tent, its polished surface reflecting the crimson sky outside. For centuries, the meteorite embedded in the corner of the Kaaba had been revered by pilgrims, but none had seen what now revealed itself. Intricate inscriptions appearing on its surface like frost on glass, glowing with internal light. "Impossible," muttered Hassan, the archaeologist who'd been permitted to document the phenomenon. "The stone has been studied for decades. These markings were never there." The Imam stood silently watching the symbols form. Ancient Aramaic, Proto-Sinaitic script, and other languages lost to history, interwoven in patterns that seemed to shift under observation. "They've always been there," he said finally, waiting for this day to reveal themselves. Sarah Williams photographed the stone from every angle, her skepticism battling with the evidence before her eyes. "What does it say?" "The first revelation," the Imam replied. "The fragment speaks of 7 truths that will be revealed in the final 24 hours. Outside, the crowd had swelled to fill every street, rooftop and balcony with a view of the Kaaba. Millions watched live streams around the world. Crimson Sky trended globally. Religious leaders issued isments ranging from caution to apocalyptic warnings, and walking purposefully through the crowd, his expensive suit incongruous among the white ihram garments of pilgrims, came Yasir al-Harith. Billionaire, media mogul, self-proclaimed defender of traditional faith, his security detail carved a path toward the research tent. "The false prophet has desecrated the sacred stone." Al-Harith's voice boomed through portable speakers. His aides carried, "This is technology, not miracle. Manipulation, not revelation." Agent Nasir Rahman watched from the perimeter, speaking quietly into his secure communications device. "Sir, Al-Harith has arrived and is inciting the crowd. Request instructions." In capital cities worldwide, emergency sessions continued. Military forces moved to secure critical infrastructure. Religious sites were placed under protection. The phenomena defied explanation, but governments prepared for civil unrest, for mass panic, for the unknown. Inside the tent, the Imam touched the stone fragment. The inscriptions pulsed in response. "The first truth," he read aloud, "is that the divisions between faiths were never meant to be. The second is that the message has been consistent throughout time, though human interpretation fractured it." Sarah recorded his words, still maintaining professional distance, but her hands trembled slightly. "And the other 5 truths will be revealed at the appointed hours." The Imam looked up as the tent flap opened. Al-Harith entered, cameras following him. His handsome face, known from countless television appearances and social media feeds, was set in righteous indignation. "San Mahdi," he said, deliberately using the Imam's former name, denying his title. "End this charade. Whatever technology you're using to create these effects, whatever chemicals you've applied to the stone, it serves only to mislead the faithful." The 2 men stood facing each other, Al-Harith in his tailored suit, the Imam in simple white garment. Old friends once, classmates at university, before ambition drove them in opposite directions. "Yasir," the Imam said softly, "you know in your heart this is real. I know you've orchestrated an elaborate hoax," Al-Harith countered, playing to the cameras, "one that will end today." The fragment began to pulse more intensely, its light casting shadows across their faces. Symbols rearranged themselves before the watching crowd. "The stone recognizes your presence," the Imam said. "It knows you have a role to play." For just a moment, uncertainty flickered across Al-Harith's confident expression. Then his media training reasserted itself. "Parlor tricks," he declared, but stepped back from the stone. "The authorities will handle this." As if on cue, Agent Rahman entered. "By authority of the International Coalition for Security, this area is now under government control. All civilians must evacuate immediately." The prophecy mentioned this too, the Imam said, seemingly untroubled. "The powers of the world will attempt to contain what cannot be contained." The black stone fragment suddenly flashed blindingly bright. When vision cleared, new inscriptions had appeared. The first revelation had begun. The glass reliquary had remained undisturbed in the Museum of Islamic History for decades. Inside, a single strand of hair, purportedly from the Prophet himself, lay on faded crimson velvet. For generations, it had been an object of reverence, but showed no extraordinary properties, until now, museum staff reported it first. A soft glow emanating from the case in the pre-dawn hours. By noon, as the Imam approached the museum, the single strand radiated light visible even in the crimson-tinged daylight filtering through windows. Another parlor trick, Sarah muttered, though her journalistic facade was cracking. She'd seen too much in the past hours to dismiss it all. Dr. Karim Nasser, the museum's scientific director, met them at the entrance. A man of precise speech and rational thought, he looked profoundly disturbed. "We've tested everything," he said without preamble. "No radiation, no chemical reaction, no external power source. It defies explanation." The Imam nodded. "The relics awaken as the hours progress." "That's not science," Karim objected. "Perhaps today science and faith converge," the Imam replied. Inside, security personnel maintained a perimeter around the display. The hair emitted a gentle pulse that seemed synchronized with something distant, perhaps the black stone, perhaps something yet unseen. Sarah's phone hadn't stopped buzzing with notifications. Similar phenomena reported worldwide. Ancient relics activating, sacred sites pulsing with unexplained energy. Her editor demanding hourly updates. And increasingly, messages from her family asking if the world was ending. "Is it?" she asked, the Imam quietly. "Ending? Transforming," he corrected. "There's a difference." Karim adjusted his glasses, a nervous habit. "I've devoted my life to rational explanation, to evidence, to proof. And now proof stands before you in a form you cannot rationalize," the Imam said gently. "There must be an explanation. There is, just not one found in your current understanding." As they spoke, the museum doors opened again. Agent Rahman entered, accompanied by uniformed personnel carrying scientific equipment. "Dr. Nasser," Rahman nodded to Karim. "We need to secure the relic for examination." "On whose authority?" Karim demanded. "International Coalition for Security. Article 7. Paragraph 3, unexplained phenomena posing potential public safety concerns." Sarah stepped forward. "The public isn't in danger. They're witnessing something extraordinary." "Miss Williams," Rahman acknowledged her, "your presence here is noted, as is your apparent shift from skepticism to something else." The implication was clear. Her credibility was being questioned. "I report what I see," she said firmly. "And what do you see?" Rahman challenged. Before she could answer, commotion erupted outside. Through the windows they watched as a procession approached. Yasir al-Harith, leading religious officials from multiple faiths, all looking grim. "The Interfaith Council demands access," a security officer reported. The Imam seemed unsurprised. "The opposer gathers allies." As foretold, Rahman raised an eyebrow. "You expected this. Every moment of these 24 hours was written centuries ago, including your presence, Agent Rahman, including the betrayal that will soon come." Karim flinched. The Imam turned to him with compassion in his eyes. "Not you, old friend. Your doubts are honest, your questions necessary." The relic's glow intensified suddenly, illuminating their faces from within the case. The strand of hair rose, suspended in the air without support. Karim's scientific instruments recorded the impossible. Sarah's camera captured what words would struggle to convey. Rahman's stoic expression faltered for the first time. And outside, al-Harith addressed the growing crowd, his voice carrying through open doors. "Beware false signs and wonders meant to mislead even the elect. This man is not the promised one." The Imam closed his eyes briefly. "The second revelation approaches. We must return to the Kaaba." As they prepared to leave, Sarah noticed something on her camera review screen, a figure in white robes, standing behind the Imam in her photographs. a figure that hadn't been physically present when she took the images. "Who is that?" she whispered, showing him. The Imam smiled sadly. "One who was foretold to stand with me in the final hours, one I have yet to meet in this life." The relic's glow turned momentarily blinding. The second stage had begun. The golden compass had been discovered 3 months earlier in an archaeological dig beneath Jerusalem's old city. Carbon dated to the 7th century, its craftsmanship defied historical context, precision engineering that shouldn't have existed in that era. Museums had competed for the right to study it, but today it sat in Karim's trembling hands, its needle spinning wildly before settling with unerring precision toward the Kaaba. "It doesn't point north," Karim muttered, scientific training warring with the evidence before him. "It never has. We assumed it was damaged or decorative. Now it's pointing to the next revelation," the Imam finished. They stood on the museum rooftop. Below, streets teemed with humanity, pilgrims, protesters, press, and police creating a tapestry of order and chaos. Military helicopters circled overhead. The crimson sky had deepened to a shade approaching purple, with veins of gold pulsing across the heavens. Sarah's satellite phone rang, her editor demanding updates. "I don't know how to explain it," she said, voice low. "Everything I'm seeing contradicts everything I've believed." Karim adjusted instruments arrayed across a makeshift workstation. Energy readings off the charts. Electromagnetic anomalies. Radiation signatures, unlike anything in our databases. He looked up. "Whatever is happening is changing the fundamental properties of matter around these sites." A young aide approached breathlessly. "Dr. Nasser, global reports coming in. The compass phenomenon, it's worldwide. Every historical compass on display in every museum on Earth has activated, all pointing to Mecca." Agent Raymond stood apart, speaking urgently into his communication device. His normally impassive face showed concern. "The military cordon is being established," he announced, rejoining them. "No one enters or leaves the sacred sites until we understand what's happening. You cannot contain this," the Imam said calmly. "Watch us try," Rehman replied. The compass in Karim's hand suddenly grew hot. He dropped it with a cry of surprise. Instead of falling, it hung suspended in the air, spinning rapidly. The needle blurred into a golden circle of light. On the street below, Al-Harith's voice carried through powerful speakers. "The false prophet brings chaos. True believers must stand against these deceptions." His words triggered confrontation at the perimeter, his followers clashing with the Imam's disciples. Security forces moved to separate them. "He creates division when unity is needed most," the Imam observed sadly. "Do you know him?" Sarah asked, recording the confrontation below. "We were friends once, before ambition consumed him." The Imam's eyes reflected ancient sorrow. His role was written long ago as well, the one who would deny until the final moment. The compass now projected a holographic map of stars, constellations in configurations that Karim immediately recognized as impossible. "These star positions won't occur for another 1,000 years, he whispered. "Time is not as linear as science has believed," the Imam replied. Rahman's communication device crackled. "Sir, we've lost satellite coverage. All systems worldwide experiencing interference." The compass projection expanded, enveloping them in a dome of stars. Within it they saw cities around the world: Jerusalem, Vatican City, Lhasa, Amritsar, Kyoto, all beneath the same crimson-purple sky, all experiencing phenomena unique to their sacred traditions. "The revelations transcend any single faith," the Imam explained. "What happens today fulfills prophecies across all traditions, though each understood only pieces of the whole." Sarah's journalistic detachment was crumbling. "Why you? Why now? Why does rain fall when clouds can no longer hold water?" the Imam answered. "The world reaches a point where old structures cannot contain new understanding." The compass projection collapsed suddenly, the device dropping to the ground, its needle now pointed directly at the Imam's heart. "The hour approaches," he said. The second revelation will occur at the Kaaba. Rahman stepped forward. No one is going anywhere. This area is under quarantine. Armed personnel appeared at rooftop access points. The Imam regarded them calmly. You cannot stop what has been ordained since time began. As if in response, every electronic device simultaneously failed. Phones, instruments, weapons systems, even Rahman's communication gear. In that moment of darkness, the compass began to glow again, and the path forward became clear. The waters of Zamzam had flowed from the desert for millennia, sustaining pilgrims, quenching both physical and spiritual thirst. Sacred to millions, the well had always been special, but now, its waters transformed before watching eyes. Luminescence spread through the ancient well, water glowing with an inner light that pulsed in rhythm with the strange aurora above. As attendants filled vessels for distribution, recipients reported immediate effects, chronic ailments easing, clarity of thought, visions of places they'd never seen. The healing properties are accelerating, Karim observed, instruments recording changes in the water's molecular structure. Chemical composition shifting to something unprecedented. Reports flooded in from across the globe. The Ganges, the Jordan River, springs at Lord. Sacred waters everywhere, exhibiting similar transformations. Hospitals reported spontaneous recoveries. The terminally ill walked from hospice care. Children born with congenital conditions suddenly thrived. It's as if the water remembers what health should be, Karim murmured, and reminds bodies how to heal themselves. Sarah witnessed a blind man's sight return after water touched his eyes. Her hands shook as she recorded the moment. Professional detachment shattering. How can I report this? She whispered. Who would believe me? The world is seeing, the Imam replied gently. Belief follows evidence when hearts remain open. They had managed to navigate from the museum of the well. Despite the military cordon, electronics functioned intermittently in widening zones of influence, radiating from sacred sites. Conventional weapons systems failed entirely within these zones. Global communications relied increasingly on older technologies, radio, analog systems, human messengers. Agent Rahman had reluctantly accompanied them. His orders evolving as authorities recognized containment was impossible. Document everything, his superiors commanded. Understand what we can. Al-Harith's resistance had grown more desperate. Mass hypnosis, his followers claimed. Chemicals in the water. Government conspiracy, but with each passing hour, with each miracle witnessed firsthand, his audience dwindled. The Imam knelt beside the well, palm hovering above the luminescent surface. The water speaks of the third revelation. Water doesn't speak, Rahman stated flatly, clinging to rationality. But Karim's instruments registered sonic patterns, emanating from the glowing liquid, complex waveforms, organizing into recognizable patterns. It's generating something like language, the scientist admitted reluctantly. Vibrations forming coherent patterns. The Imam nodded. The language that existed before human tongues shaped sounds. The vibration that began creation. A young girl approached, her mother following anxiously. Illness had left the child thin, pale, movements painful. They say the water heals, the mother said, hope and doubt warring in her eyes. Without hesitation, Rahman filled a vessel, offered it to them. This man who had come to contain and control, now facilitated what he couldn't explain. The girl drank. Color returned to her face almost immediately. Energy to her limbs, light to her eyes. Sarah captured it all. This can't be psychosomatic. It's too rapid, too complete. The water remembers perfection, the Imam explained. It carries the pattern of what should be. Karim's instruments suddenly registered massive energy surges. Something's building, the concentration of whatever force is causing these phenomena. The Imam rose. The third revelation approaches. We must reach the Black Stone. Rahman received urgent communication through his earpiece. one of the few technological devices still functioning near the Imam. His expression darkened. International coalition forces have authorized final containment protocols. They're preparing to use experimental weapons designed to operate in electromagnetic disruption. They fear what they don't understand, the Imam said, unsurprised. They'll destroy everything to prevent what they can't control, Sarah realized. The water in the well began to rise, defying gravity, forming a column that stretched toward the crimson sky. We must hurry, the Imam said. The revelations will not be stopped, but many lives hang in the balance. As they moved toward the Kaaba, water from the well followed like a wavy river, carving a path through the crowds. Behind them, the first military aircraft appeared on the horizon, unaffected by the electronic disruptions plaguing ground forces. The third revelation would not come without opposition. The timepiece emerged from beneath the Kaaba itself, the earth shifting, stones parting to reveal an ancient vault, untouched for millennia. Within lay a device unlike any historical artifact, a clock face of unknown metal, 12 symbols instead of numbers, 3 hands of different materials that should have stopped moving centuries ago. Yet it ticked with perfect precision, each movement producing harmonics that resonated with the human body, felt rather than heard. It counts down to something, Karim observed, instruments capturing data his scientific mind struggled to interpret, but not time as we measure it. The Imam nodded. It measures the space between revelations. Each symbol represents a truth humanity has always known but forgotten. The device projected 12 beams of light upward, creating a holographic calendar in the crimson sky visible to the entire city. Each symbol pulsed in sequence, accompanied by a tone that seemed to vibrate through reality itself. Military aircraft circled, but could not approach, repelled by invisible forces that engineers could neither explain nor overcome. Ground forces established perimeters, but found their weapons inoperable within a growing radius of sacred sites. Sarah documented everything, her journalistic skepticism transformed into something else, a witness to history, perhaps its most important chronicle. What happens when the final hour strikes? Completion, the Imam replied. The rejoining of what was separated long ago. Al-Harith arrived, his followers diminished but his determination unbroken. Whatever technology you've buried here, whatever deception you've orchestrated, it ends now. For the first time, the Imam addressed him immediately. Yasir, my old friend, don't you recognize the timepiece from our studies? The artifact we both sought in our youth. Uncertainty flickered across Al-Harith's features. That was a legend, a myth, as were so many truths before their time arrived. Karim's instruments detected new energy patterns emanating from the timepiece. It's communicating with the other artifacts, the compass, the water, the relics, creating some kind of network. The Imam approached the timepiece. The third revelation is upon us. He placed his hand upon the clock face. The symbols rearranged themselves, forming patterns that somehow conveyed meaning despite their unfamiliarity. Those watching felt understanding bloom in their minds, concepts without words, knowledge without language. It speaks of time, the Imam translated for those whose minds could not directly perceive, not as a line from past to future, but as a dimension we experience only partially. What we call prophecy is merely the ability to perceive time more completely. Rahman received communications through his earpiece, his expression darkening. Coalition leadership is divided. Some demand intervention regardless of cost. Others urge caution. And you, Agent Rahman, Sarah asked, what do you believe now? Having witnessed these things, the man who had arrived to contain a threat now stood transfixed by mystery. I believe, I don't know enough to judge. Wisdom begins with that admission, the Imam said approvingly. The timepiece's central hand completed one full rotation. A tone like a perfect bell resonated across the city. The clock face reconfigured, now displaying a countdown, 9 hours remaining. 9 hours until the final revelation, the Imam announced. 9 hours for humanity to prepare. Al-Harith stepped forward. Prepare for what? What happens when your countdown reaches 0? The veil thins, the Imam replied. What has been separate rejoins. Heaven and earth, someone in the crowd asked. Understanding and experience, the Imam corrected. Knowledge and wisdom, science and faith. Kareem's instruments recorded unprecedented data. Energy levels building exponentially. Whatever is happening, it's accelerating. The timepiece projected new images, scenes from across the globe, showing sacred sites activating, ancient knowledge awakening, people gathering in numbers that dwarfed any previous assemblies in human history. The world watches, Sarah observed. Every faith, every nation, as was foretold, the Imam confirmed. The revelations are for all, not for a chosen few. The timepiece's hands aligned momentarily. A pulse of energy expanded outward, passing through all present like a wave through water. Each person experienced a moment of perfect clarity, a glimpse of their place in the pattern of existence, and in that moment, Al-Harith saw something that shook his certainty to its core. The countdown continued. 8 hours, 59 minutes remained. The mirror appeared as the fourth revelation began, not emerging from hiding like previous artifacts, but materializing in the center of the gathered crowd. Perfectly circular, its frame consisted of intertwined metals that seemed to flow like liquid while remaining solid. Its surface reflected not physical reality, but something deeper. Those who gazed into it saw themselves not as they appeared outwardly, but as they truly were in spirit. Virtues and flaws, hopes and fears, all the hidden truths of the soul laid bare. Some wept at what they saw, others turned away in shame. A few stood transfixed by unexpected beauty. The mirror of truth shows what exists beyond physical form, the Imam explained. The self that persists when the body does not. Sarah approached cautiously, journalist's curiosity warring with human fear. What will I see? Only you can answer that, the Imam replied. She stood before the mirror, breath catching as the reflection formed. Not her physical self, but a luminous presence with both shadow and light. Achievements and regrets, courage and fear intermingling. The shape of her soul. I never believed, she whispered, transfixed. In the soul? The Imam asked gently. In my own capacity for good. Around them, others experienced their own revelations. Karim saw his scientific brilliance interwoven with spiritual potential he had long denied. Rahman witnessed how duty had shaped him, sometimes strengthening, sometimes limiting his understanding, and Al-Harith, pushed forward by his remaining followers, confronted a reflection that revealed ambition, overshadowing the genuine faith of his youth. Trickery, he declared, but his voice lacked conviction. The mirror's surface rippled, showing not just individual souls, but connections between them, threads of light linking all present in patterns of relationship, influence and shared purpose. We are not separate beings, the Imam observed. The illusion of separation has been humanity's greatest misunderstanding. Kareem's instruments failed completely near the mirror. It exists partially outside conventional physical laws, he concluded, scientific vocabulary struggling to describe what he witnessed. The crimson sky deepened further, now streaked with colors that had no names in human language. The timepiece continued its countdown, 7 hours remaining until the final revelation. Global communications reported mass gatherings at sacred sites worldwide. Electronic systems functioned erratically everywhere. Military forces stood down in most regions, their weapon systems unreliable, their personnel transfixed by unfolding events. Rahman received fragmented updates through his earpiece. Coalition leadership has shifted from containment to observation. They're asking for guidance on how to maintain order, as reality itself seems to be changing. Order will maintain itself, the Imam assured him. If human systems step back from interference. The mirror's surface shifted, showing glimpses of other worlds, realms that existed alongside Earth, but remained unseen during ordinary consciousness. Beings of light and purpose, moved through these dimensions, some now visible at the edges of human perception. The veil thins further, the Imam explained. What was always present becomes visible. Sarah documented everything despite knowing words would never fully capture the experience. The world needs to understand what's happening here. Understanding comes not through explanation but through experience, the Imam replied. Each person who gazes into the mirror participates in the revelation directly. The artifact began to rotate slowly, its reflective surface capturing and transforming the crimson light from above. Beams refracted outward, touching each person present with personalized illumination. In that moment, individual consciousness expanded. Linguistic barriers dissolved. Past and future became momentarily accessible alongside the present. Ancient knowledge awakened in modern minds. Al-Harith grasped the mirror's frame, a final desperate attempt to discredit what he could no longer deny. Show me the truth then. Show me why he was chosen instead of me. The mirror obliged. What he saw brought him to his knees. The Imam helped him rise. You too have a purpose in these events, old friend. A necessary role. What must I do? Al-Harith asked, resistance finally crumbling. When the moment comes, you will know. The mirror's rotation accelerated. Its surface now displayed a countdown matching the timepiece. 6 hours remaining until worlds reconnected. The fourth revelation concluded with a pulse of energy that expanded consciousness permanently in all who experienced it. What had been separate began to join. The Book of Names manifested during the 5th hour, ancient pages bound in material that resembled neither leather nor cloth, but something that shifted between states. It descended through the crimson sky on a pillar of light, coming to rest upon a pedestal that formed from the earth itself. When opened, its pages appeared blank at first glance. Then names began to appear, written in gold script that moved like living things across the surface. Names in every language, from every era of human history. Some recognizable, most unknown, all connected by intricate patterns of light that formed a web of relationships spanning time and space. The book records all who bear witness, the Imam explained, all whose consciousness participates in the great revelation, whether physically present or connected through spirit. Sarah watched her own name appear on the page, written in her mother's handwriting. How is this possible? The book knows how each soul recognizes itself, the Imam replied. It speaks in the language of your deepest identity. Karim observed the phenomenon with instruments that functioned intermittently. The names are appearing at an accelerating rate, thousands per second now. The book's pages turned of their own accord, revealing new names with each move. Billions of identities, past, present, future, all somehow contained within a volume that should not have been able to hold them. Every conscious being who has participated or will participate in the great cycle, the Imam said, from the beginning to the completion. Rahman's communication device functioned long enough to receive reports of mass migration toward sacred sites worldwide. Highways filled with pilgrims, airports overwhelmed, borders becoming meaningless as people followed an inexplicable call. They're drawn to witness, the Imam confirmed. The book calls to those whose names it bears. Al-Harith, humbled by his experience with the mirror, stood quietly observing. His followers had dispersed, many now joining the Imam's disciples. I searched the ancient texts for decades, he admitted, seeking this moment. Yet when it came, I refused to recognize it. Pride veils perception, the Imam said without judgment. But the veil now thins for all. The book pulsed with internal light. Names continued to appear, not just human identities but consciousness in all forms. Creatures of land, sea and air, beings from realms usually unseen by human perception. All consciousness participates in the revelation, the Imam explained. Though each according to its nature and capacity, Sarah found her family members' names appearing near her own, their script interconnected. They're thousands of miles away. How are they part of this? Distance is an illusion of physical perspective, the Imam replied. In consciousness, separation does not exist as we perceive it. Karim's scientific mindset struggled with concepts that defied measurement, yet his instruments recorded patterns that supported the Imam's words. Energy signatures show connections spanning the globe. A network of consciousness formed. The book's pages continued turning, revealing names organized in patterns that suggested purpose and relationship beyond coincidence. Souls grouped by shared missions across lifetimes, connections that transcended blood relation or geographic proximity. The pattern was always there, the Imam observed. Now it becomes visible. Rahman received fragmented transmissions from coalition leadership. Global systems struggling as electromagnetic anomalies intensified, yet surprisingly little panic or chaos. People are calm despite everything changing around them. Why? The expanded awareness brings perspective, the Imam explained. Fear exists only in separation. A page turned to reveal names of those physically present. Sarah, Karim, Rahman, Al-Harith. The Imam himself, though his name appeared differently, in script that seemed to shift between many identities across time. You've lived before, Sarah realized, watching the transforming name. As have we all, the Imam replied. The book remembers what we have forgotten. The timepiece showed 5 hours remaining until the final revelation. The book's pages began turning more rapidly, names blurring into rivers of light that flowed between realms of existence. As the 5th revelation reached its peak, each person heard their name called in the voice they would recognize most deeply. A parent, a beloved friend, their own higher consciousness. In that calling, something awakened. Ancient memory, soul purpose, recognition of a journey extending far beyond a single lifetime. The book closed momentarily, then reopened to blank pages that began filling anew, this time with names of those yet to come, future generations who would inherit the transformed world. The 5th revelation completed with the book remaining open, accessible to all who approached with sincere intention. 4 hours remained until worlds rejoined. The celestial map descended as the 6th hour began, not a physical artifact, but a living projection in the sky above the Kaaba. Stars arranged themselves in configurations unknown to modern astronomy, yet eerily familiar to those who studied ancient texts. The heavens as they appeared at the beginning, the Imam explained, and as they will align at completion. Qur'an scientists transformed by successive revelations recognized stellar patterns that shouldn't be possible. Some of these stars no longer exist. Others haven't formed yet. This shows time frames spanning billions of years simultaneously. Time is circular when viewed from outside its constraints. The Imam replied, the map shows the complete cycle. Above them, constellations shifted, forming, dissolving, reforming in patterns that told a story of cosmic evolution. Celestial bodies moved in orbits that traced sacred geometries. The universe itself revealed as an intricate dance of purpose rather than random chance. Sarah and Karim now worked together, documenting what words and instruments could capture. Their earlier skepticism transformed through direct experience into a new kind of understanding, neither blind faith nor cynical doubt, but knowing through participation. The ancients saw this, Sarah realized, recognizing symbols from diverse traditions, reflected in the stellar movements. Every culture's astronomy contains fragments of this map. They glimpsed portions through the veil, the Imam confirmed. Today the complete pattern becomes visible again. The map expanded, showing not just stars but the energetic connections between them. Cosmic highways that linked solar systems, galaxies, dimensions, routes that advanced civilizations had traveled. Pathways that consciousness itself followed between realms of existence. Rahman's communications had ceased entirely. Global electronic systems functioned only intermittently now, yet panic had not ensued. Instead, a strange calm settled over humanity as awareness expanded beyond individual concerns. The governments are standing down, Rahman reported after speaking with a messenger who'd arrived on foot. military forces withdrawing from sacred sites worldwide. They've accepted that intervention is impossible and perhaps undesirable. Al-Harith, humbled by previous revelations, stood at the Imam's side, former adversary now serving as witness and supporter. I was blind to what we both studied for decades. The signs were always there. All awaken in their appointed time, the Imam replied without judgment. The celestial map pulsed with increasing intensity as stars aligned in prophesied configurations. Energy cascaded through the connections flowing toward Earth, concentrating at sacred sites where millions had gathered. Those assembled felt the stellar energy enter their bodies, awakening dormant capabilities, expanding consciousness beyond previous limitations. Ancient knowledge became accessible, past incarnations momentarily visible. The arbitrary boundaries between individual awareness thinned. We remember who we were before birth. Someone whispered in awe, who we will be after death. Continuity was never broken, the Imam confirmed. Only veiled from perception. The map focused suddenly on a specific stellar alignment, 7 stars forming a pattern, recognized in prophecies across traditions. As they watched, an 8th star appeared where none had existed, completing the configuration. The sign of completion, the Imam announced. The celestial alignment foretold in every authentic tradition. From that completed pattern, a pulse of energy unlike any before it surged toward Earth. Those with expanded perception saw it approaching, a wave of transformation that would forever alter the relationship between consciousness and form. What happens when it reaches us? Sarah asked, documenting these final moments before global change. The 7th revelation begins, the Imam replied. The penultimate transformation before worlds rejoin. The timepiece counted down, 3 hours remaining until the final revelation. The celestial map began to descend, stars drawing closer, the boundaries between heaven and earth thinning with each passing moment. Karim's few functioning instruments recorded energy patterns that defied known physics. Reality itself is being rewritten at the quantum level, the fundamental forces reconfiguring. The Imam nodded, not rewritten but remembered. The original pattern, reasserting as distortions fade. The stellar alignment reached its perfect configuration. The wave of energy touched the gathered million. In that moment, every person experienced simultaneous knowing, ancient wisdom, future potential, cosmic purpose, all downloaded directly into consciousness, bypassing linguistic and cultural barriers. The 6th revelation, completed with humanity's collective understanding, fundamentally altered, and the countdown continued. 3 hours until worlds rejoined. The key manifested in the Imam's hand as the 7th hour began, not through dramatic materialization, but as if it had always been there, only now becoming visible. Ancient metal that gleamed with inner light, its design incorporated symbols from every spiritual tradition humanity had known. The Key of Solomon, Al-Harith whispered, recognizing it from ancient texts, said to unlock the chambers between worlds. The Imam nodded. Not Solomon alone, every tradition knew it by different names. The key that opens what was closed when humanity chose separation over unity. The ground beneath the Kaaba trembled. Stones shifted, revealing a spiral staircase descending into depths that shouldn't have existed beneath the known foundations. Archaeological records showed solid bedrock, where an opening now appeared. The hidden chambers, the Imam explained, sealed until the appointed time. Sarah translated ancient inscriptions that appeared around the opening. These combined scripts from multiple traditions, Aramaic, Sanskrit, Proto-Sinaitic, Egyptian hieroglyphs, all saying essentially the same thing. What do they say? Rahman asked, now fully invested in documentation rather than containment. The separation ends. The rejoining begins. Enter and remember, Sarah translated. The Imam descended first, key illuminating steps that spiraled deeper than physically possible, given the known geology. The others followed, Sarah, Karim, Rahman, Al-Harith, each step taking them not just downward, but somehow inward, toward a center that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The chamber they entered defied spatial logic, larger inside than the exterior could possibly contain. Walls inscribed with a unified text that combined all sacred writings into one coherent narrative. At the center stood 7 pillars, arranged in a circle, each corresponding to a revelation already witnessed. The original templates, the Imam explained, from which all authentic traditions descended. Karim's remaining instruments detected energy signatures emanating from the pillars, patterns matching the cosmic frequencies displayed in the celestial map. These are connected to the stars, he realized, transmitters and receivers, linking Earth to specific cosmic coordinates. The ancients understood this connection, the Imam confirmed. Sacred sites were never chosen arbitrarily, but placed at nodes where cosmic energy flows most directly into planetary consciousness. As they watched, the key in the Imam's hand resonated with the pillars, activating sequences that caused new inscriptions to appear, prophecies so ancient they predated known civilizations. Sarah documented what appeared, recognizing fragments that had survived in texts across diverse cultures. These are the source materials, the original revelations that became the foundation of every authentic spiritual teaching. Before division, the Imam nodded. Before the knowledge was fragmented and personalized by human interpretation. Al-Harith approached one pillar, touching inscriptions reverently. All my life, I defended one tradition against others. Yet here I see they sprang from the same source. The 7th revelation restores this knowing, the Imam said. Unity beneath apparent diversity. The key began to pulse with increasing intensity. The Imam placed it in a receptacle at the chamber's center. Energy flowed between the key and the 7 pillars, forming a geometric pattern of light that expanded to surround those present. The original blueprint activates, the Imam explained. The pattern that existed before distortion. Within this energy field, each person experienced direct knowing, beyond language, beyond cultural conditioning, beyond the limitations of individual perspective. Sacred geometry became not just visible, but experientially understood. The mathematics of creation revealed as both infinitely complex and elegantly simple. I see how it all connects, Karim whispered. Science and spirituality describing the same reality from different perspectives. The artificial boundaries dissolve, the Imam confirmed. Knowledge reunifies, the chamber began to expand, walls becoming transparent, revealing additional chambers extending outward in all directions. In these spaces, gathered souls from across time appeared, ancients who had preserved fragments of the original knowing, future beings who would inherit the restored template, contemporaries witnessing from sacred sites worldwide. All who participate in the revelations are connected through this chamber, the Imam explained. Across time, across space, across dimensions. The timepiece's countdown continued visibly in the air above them. 2 hours remaining until the final revelation. Energy continued to build as the key activated the 7 pillars fully. The unified field strengthened, extending beyond the chamber, beyond Mecca, encompassing all sacred sites globally. The 7th revelation completes, the Imam announced. As the energy reached its peak, the remembering accelerates. In that moment, the collective consciousness of humanity experienced a quantum leap, fragmented knowledge reintegrating, artificial divisions dissolving. The original understanding of reality partially restored, and still the greatest revelation awaited. 2 hours until worlds rejoin. The sword materialized as they emerged from the chamber, not descending from above or rising from below, but condensing from light itself. Ancient metal that seemed both solid and fluid, its blade inscribed with symbols that shifted and changed, as if alive. The hilt bore 7 gems corresponding to the revelations already witnessed. It floated before them, suspended in air, awaiting the one who would wield it. The sword of faith, Al-Harith whispered, said to cut through illusion to reveal ultimate truth, and to defend that truth when necessary, the Imam added. The sword rotated slowly, evaluating all present. It paused before Rahman, the skeptical agent who had come to contain what he now helped protect. Before Karim, the scientist whose instruments had recorded the unmeasurable. Before Sarah, the journalist whose documentation would preserve these events for future generations. The sword lingered longest before Al-Harith, former opponent whose resistance had transformed to support. Then it moved to the Imam, coming to rest in his outstretched hand. The blade blazed with inner fire that harmed neither the wielder nor those who approached with sincere hearts. Not a weapon of division, the Imam explained, but a tool of discernment. It separates truth from falsehood without harming those who simply misunderstood. The crimson sky had deepened to violet now, pulsing with energies visible even to those without expanded perception. The 7 previous revelations had prepared humanity's consciousness for what approached. The final transformation that would permanently alter the relationship between physical and spiritual dimensions. Sarah had committed fully to documenting these events, knowing her words would reach those not physically present. I've spent my career debunking claims of the miraculous. Now I witness what can only be described as miraculous, yet it feels more real than anything I've known before. The miraculous is simply the natural functioning of higher laws not yet understood, the Imam replied. What seems impossible at one level of perception becomes inevitable at another. They stood now at the center of a vast gathering, millions physically present, billions connected through consciousness. The boundaries between individual awareness continued to thin, creating a unified field of perception that spanned the globe. Yet in that moment of approaching unity, a final resistance manifested. Figures in dark clothing emerged from the crowd, a cadre of those who feared the coming transformation, who preferred the familiarity of limited perception to the unknown potential of expanded awareness. They moved with coordinated purpose toward the Imam, weapons concealed beneath robes. The final test, the Imam acknowledged, recognizing their approach. Even in the presence of undeniable truth, some will choose illusion. The sword in his hand pulsed with increasing light, not threatening but illuminating, revealing the approaching figures not as enemies but as souls playing a necessary role in the unfolding drama. Rahman stepped forward, security training still active despite his transformed understanding. I'll intercept them. No, the Imam said gently. This confrontation must occur. It was always part of the pattern. The leader of the resistant group pushed through the crowd, a face familiar to all present. Jamal, the Imam's closest disciple since the beginning. The trusted one, the betrayer foretold in every authentic tradition. It cannot be allowed to continue, Jamal declared, drawing a concealed weapon. Reality as we know it will end. Yes, the Imam agreed calmly. That is precisely the point. The sword blazed brighter, not in aggression but in revelation. Its light penetrated Jamal's consciousness, illuminating the fear that motivated his resistance, fear of losing identity, fear of the unknown, fear of personal insignificance in the face of cosmic truth. I see your fear, old friend, the Imam said with infinite compassion. It served its purpose in the pattern, but now that purpose completes. The timepiece counted down, 1 hour remaining until the final revelation. Jamal's weapon wavered. What happens to us? To who we are now? Nothing true is lost, the Imam assured him. Only the artificial boundaries dissolve. The sword's light enveloped Jamal completely, revealing his soul's true nature to all present. Not a betrayer by essence, but a necessary catalyst, playing a difficult role. His resistance crumbled as he recognized his place in the greater pattern. I didn't understand, he whispered, weapon dropping from his hand. Understanding comes now, the Imam said, embracing him. The sword's light expanded, encompassing all present, revealing each soul's purpose within the unfolding revelation. Former adversaries recognized their complementary roles. Apparent divisions dissolved in the light of higher understanding. The 8th revelation began as the sword pulsed with its final illumination. the knowing that conflict itself had been a necessary teacher in humanity's journey toward reunification. 1 hour remained until worlds rejoined. The veil appeared as the 9th hour began, not descending or materializing, but simply becoming visible, as if it had always been present yet unseen. Translucent fabric that seemed to exist between dimensions, rippling with patterns that shifted between all known sacred geometry. Through its delicate weave, other realities became partially visible, realms that had always existed alongside the physical world, but remained imperceptible to ordinary consciousness. Beings of light moved through these adjacent dimensions, their forms suggesting both familiarity and complete otherness. The boundary between worlds, the Imam explained, thinning. As the final revelation approaches, Sarah reached toward it, hand passing partially through. She gasped, as awareness expanded beyond physical limitations, consciousness briefly experiencing multiple dimensions simultaneously. "I saw everything," she whispered, when she withdrew her hand. "All connected, all alive with purpose." The veil allows glimpses across the spectrum of existence. The Imam nodded. What mystics have experienced throughout history becomes accessible to all as the separation diminishes. Karim's remaining functional instruments recorded unprecedented data, energy patterns that suggested the interpenetration of multiple dimensional fields. Reality is far more complex than our science has understood. What we perceived as solid matter is merely one vibrational state among infinite possibilities. The ancients knew, the Imam confirmed. They described it through metaphor and symbol when direct language failed. The veil rippled more intensely as the timepiece counted down, 45 minutes remaining until the final revelation. Through its thinning fabric, gathered millions glimpsed beings approaching from adjacent realities, consciousness that had evolved beyond physical limitation, returning to assist in the transformation, our elder siblings in cosmic evolution, the Imam explained. Those who completed similar journeys on other worlds, in other dimensions. Some in the crowd fell to their knees, interpreting these beings through religious frameworks, angels, devas, enlightened ancestors. Others stood in silent awe, scientific understanding, expanding to accommodate direct experience of what theoretical physics had only postulated. Rahman watched the veil thin further, former skepticism completely transformed. All my life enforcing boundaries between nations, between ideologies. Now I see how artificial those divisions always were, necessary for a phase of development, the Imam assured him. But that phase concludes today. The veil pulsed with increasing luminosity as the countdown continued, 30 minutes remaining. Through its thinning membrane, communication flowed between dimensions, not in language, but in direct transmission of knowing. Those gathered received understanding that transcended cultural limitations and historical context. Al-Harith, former opponent now ally, stood alongside the Imam. "I fought against this day because I feared losing what I thought defined us. Our distinct traditions, our separate identities. Nothing true is lost in unification," the Imam replied. "Only false boundaries dissolve." The veil thinned further, worlds interpenetrating more completely. Sacred sites globally reported similar phenomena, reality itself becoming permeable, the artificial separation between physical and spiritual dimensions dissolving. Sarah continued documenting, though conventional language increasingly failed to capture the experience. How will humanity integrate this knowledge? How will we live once the veil is completely lifted? With expanded perception comes expanded responsibility, the Imam answered. The capacity grows to match the understanding. As the countdown reached 15 minutes, the veil became almost transparent. Those gathered could now perceive the intricate structure of reality, layered dimensions interpenetrating, consciousness flowing between states of existence, time itself revealed as a construct rather than an absolute. Beings from adjacent dimensions moved closer, their presence felt as waves of unconditional compassion and support. Not distant deities demanding worship, but elder aspects of the same cosmic family, returning to welcome humanity's awakening. They've been with us always, the Imam explained, guiding, supporting, respecting our free will while offering assistance at critical junctures in our development. The veil began to dissolve entirely in certain locations, patches of direct connection between worlds forming, expanding. Through these openings flowed energy that transformed the surrounding physical environment, matter itself responding to higher vibrational frequencies. The ninth revelation completes, the Imam announced, as the veil became a network of light rather than a barrier. The separation was never absolute, only a temporary learning condition. The timepiece showed 5 minutes remaining until the final revelation. The worlds continued merging, not catastrophically, but harmoniously, each vibration finding its place in a greater symphony of existence. What had been veiled stood revealed at last. The crown descended through the dissolving veil, intricate metalwork that seemed both ancient and beyond any known civilization's craftsmanship. 7 gems corresponding to the previous revelations adorned its circumference, with an 8th space empty, awaiting the final stone. It hovered above the gathering, pulsing with light that connected to each person present through threads of conscious energy. Not a symbol of hierarchical authority, but a conduit for unified awareness, the antithesis of separation and dominion. The crown of light, Al-Harith recognized from ancient texts, said to contain the complete knowledge of creation, accessible only when consciousness has sufficiently expanded to receive it. The Imam nodded, not meant for one head but for collective awakening, the crown that connects rather than divides. The timepiece counted the final minutes, 3 minutes until the ultimate revelation. The crown descended further, now at eye level, with the gathered millions, each gem activated sequentially, pulsing with the essence of the revelation it represented. Sarah broadcast these final moments globally through consciousness rather than technology, direct transmission that reached all open to receiving. What we witness transcends any previous understanding of reality. The separation between observer and observed dissolved. The crown rotated slowly, each facet revealing aspects of existence previously hidden. The underlying patterns connecting all phenomena, the purpose within apparent randomness, the conscious nature of what science had considered inanimate. Tarim's scientific mind expanded to encompass direct knowing beyond empirical measurement. The universe isn't merely alive, it's a unified field of consciousness expressing through infinite forms. Our science glimpsed shadows of this reality, but the complete pattern remained elusive until now. 2 minutes remained on the timepiece, the crown's rotation accelerated, creating a field of energy that enveloped the gathering completely. Within this field, individual consciousness remained distinct, yet simultaneously experienced unity. The paradox resolving not through logic but through direct perception. Rahman, former agent of containment, now stood as witness to expansion. The barriers we created, nations, ideologies, competing beliefs, all artificial constructs that served temporary purposes in our development. Necessary scaffolding, the arm confirmed, now being dismantled as the structure completes. 1 minute remained. The crown began to emit tones, harmonics that resonated with the fundamental frequency of existence itself. These sounds activated dormant capacities within the human energy system, neural pathways previously unused coming online, DNA itself responding to vibrational patterns encoded since humanity's inception. Al-Harith, who had once opposed this transformation, now embraced it fully. We feared losing ourselves in unity. Now I see we find our truest selves only through connection. 30 seconds, the crown's empty setting began to fill with light. Not a physical gem forming, but pure consciousness condensing into visible manifestation. This final stone contained the essence of the ultimate revelation, the purpose toward which all previous awakenings had been building. What we witness now, the Imam explained, is not the end, but the true beginning. Consciousness recognizing itself through form, completing the cycle that began with apparent separation. The final seconds counted down, the crown's 8th gem fully formed. A stone unlike any other, containing all colors simultaneously while transcending the visible spectrum entirely. As the timepiece reached 0, the crown descended upon the Imam, not as personal coronation but as activation of the collective field he had helped cultivate. Knowledge flowed through him to all present, direct transmission of the final revelation. In that moment, each person experienced their cosmic context, the journey of consciousness from unity through apparent separation and back to unity with the added dimension of individual awareness. The purpose of existence revealed, not as abstract concept, but as lived reality. The Imam spoke, voice resonating with the harmonics of multiple dimensions. The separation was never absolute. The journey through limitation was chosen for the joy of remembering. What completes today is not your identity, but the illusion of isolation. The crown's light expanded exponentially, connecting sacred sites worldwide through networks of conscious energy. The final revelation flowed through these connections, reaching all who had prepared through the previous awakenings. What had been prophesied in fragments throughout human history, now unified in a single understanding that transcended any particular tradition, while fulfilling the essence of all. The transformation had begun. They fell like gentle rain, crystalline droplets descending through the transformed atmosphere. Not water, but something that existed between physical and non-physical states. Each tear-shaped crystal contained light that pulsed with consciousness, resonating with the awareness of those who witnessed their arrival. The tears of angels, Al-Harith whispered. Recognition dawning from ancient texts said to fall only at moments of cosmic significance. The weeping of joy when dimensions reconnect. The crystals landed softly upon upturned faces, dissolving upon contact, transmitting direct experience that bypassed intellectual understanding. Each person received precisely what their consciousness could integrate, unique yet connected to the collective awakening. Sarah gathered several tears in her palms, watching as they merged into a single luminous pool before absorbing into her skin. They contain memory, not just human experiences, knowledge from throughout the cosmos. The record of all consciousness, the Imam confirmed. What some traditions call the Akashic field becomes directly accessible as the veils thin completely. The crown continued to pulse with the final revelation's energy, using the Imam as conduit rather than sole recipient. Through him, understanding flowed to all present, not information but direct knowing beyond language or concept. Karim collected tears for analysis, though his scientific instruments registered only partial aspects of their nature. They contain elements unknown to our periodic table matter that exists in quantum superposition between states we considered mutually exclusive. The tears reveal what has always been true, the Imam explained. Reality is not fixed, but responsive to consciousness. What appears solid is merely one possible configuration of energy, consensually maintained. Throughout the world, the crystalline tears fell upon sacred sites where millions had gathered. Global communications had largely failed as electromagnetic fields fluctuated with the merging dimensions, yet awareness flowed unimpeded through non-physical connection. Rahman watched as military and government structures worldwide stood down, not through defeat, but through transformation of purpose. The old systems dissolved not through destruction but through transcendence. We built what we needed for a phase of development that now The tears continued falling, their light illuminating the gathering darkness as day shifted to night. Yet true darkness did not come. The merged dimensions created perpetual twilight, a liminal space between old reality and new potential. Amid this transformation, resistance made its final stand. Those who feared loss of identity, loss of control, loss of familiar limitations gathered their remaining resources for one last attempt to halt what could not be stopped. Led by a small faction of those who had built power upon separation, they approached the Kaaba with technologies designed to disrupt the energetic field, devices created from partial understanding of multidimensional physics. Even now, some choose fear over expansion, the Imam observed without judgment. Their resistance too serves the greater pattern. The crown's light intensified as the opposition approached. The sword that the Imam had set aside now rose again, not as weapon but as instrument of final discernment. The tears fell more heavily around the resistors, offering direct experience that could dissolve fear if accepted. Some among the opposition faltered, dropping their devices as tears touched their skin and transmitted understanding beyond intellectual argument. Others pressed forward, determination fueled by terror of the unknown. Their leader, a figure who had manipulated world events from shadow, approached the Imam directly. "You would destroy everything we've built. Millennia of civilization, structure, order. Not destruction," the Imam corrected gently. "Transformations. The caterpillar may fear the cocoon dissolves its form, yet the butterfly emerges nevertheless." The tears fell directly upon the leader, offering the same opportunity for expansion given to all. For a moment resistance wavered, as direct experience bypassed entrenched beliefs. In that moment of openness, the crown pulsed with concentrated light that illuminated the leader's consciousness completely, revealing not an enemy to be defeated, but a soul playing a necessary opposing role in the cosmic drama. Understanding dawned. The leader lowered his weapon. "See the pattern now. All roles serve the awakening," the Imam acknowledged. "Even opposition creates strength for what emerges." The tears continued falling worldwide, dissolving final resistance not through conquest, but through revelation. What had been hidden stood revealed. The unity beneath apparent opposition, the purpose within conflict, the conscious evolution served by all roles in the cosmic drama. The 11th revelation completed as the tears transmuted the final resistance into conscious participation. The transformation entered its final phase. The tablet emerged not from above or below, but from within, condensing from the unified field of consciousness that now enveloped the planet. Crystalline material that seemed both ancient and impossibly advanced, inscribed with symbols that rearranged themselves continuously, adapting to the perceptual capacity of each observer. It materialized before the Imam, suspended in the space between dimensions, visible to all yet existing beyond purely physical parameters. The divine tablet, Al-Haritha recognized, voice hushed with reverence. The original template from which all creation manifests, what some traditions called the mind of God. The tablet pulsed with living light, each symbol shifting through alphabets known and unknown, forming patterns that conveyed meaning directly to consciousness rather than through language. Every sacred text ever written contained fragments of what the tablet displayed in its complete form. "The final truth reveals itself," the Imam said. "Not as ending, but as eternal beginning." The gathered millions fell silent as the tablet's emanations intensified. Each person received the revelation according to their capacity, scientists perceiving the underlying mathematical harmony of existence, artists glimpsing the aesthetic principles that informed cosmic evolution, spiritual seekers experiencing the conscious intention behind manifestation. Sarah witnessed the complete story of consciousness from undifferentiated unity through differentiation into form, the purpose behind apparent separation, the joy of remembering wholeness through individuated experience. It was never about escaping the world, she realized, but about bringing higher awareness into form. The descent was always in service of a greater ascent, the Imam confirmed, not rejection of materiality, but its transformation through conscious participation. Karim observed the tablet's structure with expanded scientific perception. It contains the unified field theory we've sought for centuries, the patterns that connect quantum mechanics to cosmic scale, reconciling all paradoxes through additional dimensions of order. Science reaches the same summit as spirituality. The Imam nodded. Through different paths that ultimately converge. The tablet expanded, sections becoming visible that addressed every domain of human inquiry: physics, mathematics, medicine, psychology, art, governance, relationship, each revealing principles that transcended previous understanding while fulfilling its highest aspirations. Throughout the world, as people witnessed the tablet through direct consciousness rather than physical proximity, spontaneous healing occurred, not just of bodies, but of relationships, societies, ecosystems. The principles displayed reorganized patterns at every level of existence. Rahman watched as global conflict ceased, not through victory of one side over another, but through revelation of the unity beneath apparent opposition. Wars end when we recognize ourselves in the other, he observed. The illusion of separation fueled all conflict, and its dissolution heals all division. The Imam completed. Al-Harith, who had once led opposition against the Imam, now stood beside him as ally. The traditions spoke truly, though we interpreted narrowly. The prophecies fulfilled themselves in ways both simpler and more profound than we imagined. The tablet's light intensified as it revealed the final aspect of the ultimate revelation, the purpose of conscious existence itself. Not escape from form, but conscious embodiment of the formless. Not rejection of diversity, but its celebration within recognized unity. The journey never ends, the Imam explained as the tablet displayed cosmic cycles beyond current Earth evolution. Consciousness eternally explores its own nature through increasingly complex expression. What completes today is merely one cycle in an infinite spiral. The tablet began to dissolve, not disappearing but integrating with the consciousness of all who witnessed its knowledge, becoming directly accessible rather than externally referenced. As this integration reached completion, the final energetic shift began. The merging dimensions stabilized in a new configuration, physical reality remaining tangible, but now recognized as one expression of a multidimensional existence. The veil that had limited perception thinned permanently, allowing expanded awareness to function alongside material focus. Sarah felt the change within her own consciousness, the ability to perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously, while maintaining individual identity. We don't lose ourselves in unity, she realized. We find our true nature as unique expressions of the whole. The fear that prevented this recognition now dissolves, the Imam confirmed. What remains is the joy of conscious co-creation. The 12th revelation completed, as the tablet fully integrated with planetary consciousness, its wisdom accessible to all, through direct knowing. The transformation reached its culmination as the first light of a new era dawned on the horizon. The new dawn broke across the horizon, not merely sunlight but a fundamental shift in the nature of reality itself. Colors previously unseen by human eyes now visible within the spectrum. Harmonics previously inaudible now enriching every sound. The physical world unchanged yet perceived with profound new depth and connection. Humanity awakened to its transformed consciousness. Not a singular collective that erased individuality, but a unity that celebrated unique perspective, while recognizing essential connection. The paradox resolved through direct experience rather than intellectual understanding. The Imam stood among the gathered millions, crown of light now integrated with his being rather than worn externally. Its energy had distributed through the unified field, accessible to all according to their readiness and purpose. The prophecies spoke of end times, he observed, but what ends is limitation, not existence. What begins is conscious co-creation. Sarah documented these first moments of the new era, knowing that future generations would study this transition. How do we describe what defies description? How do we record transformation of awareness itself? Through changed lives, the Imam replied. Through healing of ancient wounds, through societies built on recognition of connection rather than exploitation of division. Around them, the world adjusted to new perception. The merged dimensions stabilized into harmonious relationship. Physical reality remained tangible, yet recognized as one expression among many possible configurations of consciousness. Karim surveyed the dawn with both scientific precision and spiritual appreciation. The false boundary between these approaches now dissolved. The laws of physics haven't changed, but our understanding of them has expanded exponentially. What we considered fundamental forces are revealed as expressions of conscious intention operating through mathematical elegance. Science becomes the study of how consciousness manifests through pattern, the Imam nodded, rather than the study of supposedly unconscious mechanisms. Rahman watched as global systems reorganized spontaneously, not through collapse, but through transformation. Governance shifting from control to facilitation. Economics from scarcity to regenerative abundance. Education from memorization to awakening, innate knowing. The old structures don't disappear overnight, he noted, but their foundation has fundamentally shifted. Evolution continues, the Imam confirmed, but now consciously directed rather than unconsciously reactive. Al-Harith, former adversary now ally, stood watching the sunrise alongside those he had once opposed. All authentic traditions foretold this moment, though we interpreted through the limitations of our understanding. The prophecies fulfilled themselves in ways both more literal and more metaphorical than we imagined. The dawn light strengthened, illuminating the transformed world. What appeared as miraculous in the beginning now revealed itself as the natural functioning of expanded awareness. Spontaneous healing, telepathic communication, conscious interaction with matter, capacities that had always existed as potentials now awakening as humanity's birthright. Not supernatural, the Imam explained, but natural to consciousness unconstrained by artificial limitation. The final artifacts had integrated with planetary consciousness, their wisdom accessible to all through direct knowing rather than external authority. The sword's discernment, the mirror's revelation, the crown's connection, the tablet's template, all became internal resources rather than external objects. As the new dawn fully illuminated the world, the Imam prepared to step back from his role as catalyst. The teacher appears when needed, then dissolves back into the whole when understanding blooms independently. Sarah recognized the shift. "You're leaving? The function completes," he smiled. The Mahdi was never a permanent role, but a catalyst for transformation. What awakens now continues through each of you. His form began to shimmer with intensifying light, not disappearing but transforming, consciousness releasing its temporary concentration to rejoin the greater field, while maintaining connection with all it had touched. "Remember," his voice resonated as his physical form dissolved into light. "Separation was illusion. Connection is reality. The journey continues eternally. You were never alone." His presence merged with the dawn, distributing through the unified field of consciousness that now enveloped the planet. Not absent, but omnipresent, accessible through the same expanded awareness he had helped catalyze. Those gathered felt not loss but fulfillment, not ending but beginning. The prophecies completed, the transformation established, the new era dawning. Sarah documented the final moments, knowing words would never fully capture the experience, yet committed to preserving the transition for those who would follow. "How does one record the day humanity remembered its true nature?" she wrote. "Perhaps simply by noting, we awakened, we remembered, we continue." The new dawn strengthened, illuminating a world forever changed, not through external apocalypse, but through internal revelation. The journey had only just begun.